Hello! Welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I'd do something a little bit different, no guitar tutorial for today. So what I thought we'd do is look at a couple of theory terms really quick. Just get some of the basic kind of terminology out of the way and then go on to some deeper stuff in different videos. So, okay, let's get straight into it. So the first thing I would like to look at is the stave. The stave looks like this. And what it is essentially the paper, if you will, for writing music on. All your notes go on here, time signatures, things like that. So the first thing I'll do is explain the notes. We'll keep things in just one type of stave now. There's many types. There's treble, alto, bass. There's lots of different kind of ways that you can write music on these, but we'll just focus on treble, which is kind of the standard. So if there is a note on the line, then you play a specific note, and if there is a note in between the lines, then you play a different note. So going up, the first line that it starts off is E, and so it goes E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. And you can put lines, you can put notes kind of on lines below the stave or above the stave. So the order of lines is E, G, B, D, F. Yes, E, B, G, D, F. And a common way that I've seen most people kind of remember this is with a phrase that is every good boy deserves I would say football. That's the one that I learned up with, but there's also kind of food, or there's empty goldfish bowl, dead fish. And that's kind of the most common phrases to remember those. And then in between the lines it's FACE, so kind of just remember face. And that's the notes. Next, you would have the clef, which goes on the, I think, very far left. It's kind of the first thing that you would see, and that tells you what kind of stave you're working in. I will get onto clefs in a minute, and then there is also the time signature, which tells you what time signature you're working in, which I will also get to in a minute. So the next term that I would like to talk about is the clef. So what the clef is it's essentially like a small shape at the beginning that tells you the stave that you're working with. So whether it's treble, if it's a treble clef, then it's the order that I just said. There's also bass clef, alto clef. There's many others that kind of not necessary to get into now, but eventually we'll probably look into them. So the treble clef, as it will, looks like this, and yeah, it basically just tells you what stave you're working with. It can sometimes be called the G clef, but that's pretty much everything on clefs. So now move on to the time signature. So what the time signature is it's two numbers on top of each other, and it tells you how many crotchets are in a bar. I say crotchets, that's quarter notes. So I will get onto those in a minute. The most common one is 4/4 time, which looks like this. And that is quite literally just a 4 on top of a 4, so there are 4 crotchets on the top in a bar, which is the 4 at the bottom. There's also 3/4, which looks like this. There's 6/8, which looks like this. There's most commonly I'm pretty much sure that the only number that could be on the bottom is a multiple of 4. And we won't get into odd or compound time signatures at the moment. We'll just stick with 4/4. And it's essentially just if you see 4/4, then it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So kind of standard for most music. So let's move on to the next thing. So the next thing is key signatures. So key signatures are essentially where you will have to the right of the time signature a series of sharps or flats that tells you what key you're in. So I will get on to what sharps and flats are in a minute. So sharps and flats at the side, and essentially a certain number of sharps will tell you what key you're in, and then every single time you come across one of those notes on the stave, you have to play it as that said sharp or that said flat. So if you had no sharps or flats, then you would be in C major. If you had one, you would be in G major. And if you had one flat, you would be in F major, and so on. That is kind of pretty much everything on sharps or flats. So let's move on, shall we? So the next thing I want to talk about is note values. So note values are how long a note goes along for, how long a note lasts. So if we start at the beginning, you have a semibreve or a whole note, and if you put yourself in 4/4 time signature, then a semibreve would last for four beats. So, or 4 times that of that pulse. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next is a minim or a quarter note, and a quarter note is essentially half that. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you move on to crotchets or quarter notes, and they are 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So after crotchets, you have quavers or eighth notes, and they are 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. And after that, you have semi-quavers, and they are. I'm gonna have to tap on my desk here because I can't click that fast. But they are 1 E under, 2 E under, 3 E under, 4 E under. Okay. I'll try clapping now. 1 E under, 2 E under, 3 E under, 4 E under. Okay. From there, you kind of can keep going down. There's terms for others, but realistically, those are kind of the most. Those are the most common. Those are really the only ones you're going to come across in most kind of music. And then you get to triplets. So triplets are when you take a group of quavers or eighth notes, and you would fit 3 eighth notes into the space of 2 beats. So typically you would be taking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and there's 2 eighth notes in the space of 2 beats. Oh, sorry, yeah. 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So in between that 1 and 2, you've got kind of 2 notes. But you would be putting to do triplets, you need to put a third in there. So it would be 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under, 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. And you can do this with other note values. You can put 3 crotchets or quarter notes into the space of a minim or a half note, or you could take it down or you can take it up, and it would work. But the most common is with quavers or eighth notes into crotchets or half notes. Okay, so from there, let's move on, shall we? So the next thing I'd like to talk about is sharps or flats. So sharp and flat essentially means that you raise a certain pitch or a certain note up by half a step, so, or a semitone, And so that's sharps, and then flats is essentially you do the same thing, but the other way. So you take a certain note and you lower it by half a step or a semitone. So very quickly, semitones is essentially the smallest gap you can take in typical kind of Western music. If you look to Eastern music, a lot of the times they will use microtones, but typically in Western music, most of the time it's going to be the smallest gap you can take is a semitone. And so if you have a note E, you raise it up by, actually that's a poor example, let's go with a D. You take a D and raise it up by a semitone, you will get D sharp. If you take a D and lower it by a semitone, then you would get a D flat. There is also there is a tone gap as well. So if you would go from D and raise it up a tone, you get an E. If you go for D and lower it a tone, you get a C. But that's not what sharps and flats do. Sharps will raise it by a semitone or lower it by a semitone. Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk about is rests. And so a rest is essentially where you pause or take a breather. It's essentially kind of the musical equivalent of a comma. So if you have a crotchet rest, then you rest for 1 quarter note. If you have a quaver rest, you rest for a 8th note. If you have a minim rest, you rest for a half note. So that's essentially what rests are. They are the musical comma. Okay, so from there we'll move on, shall we? Okay, so the next thing is the difference between kind of different sounding scales. So actually I will start with what a scale is. So a scale is a certain number of notes in a certain order that kind of defines your parameters in music, if you will, the kind of the guidelines. You can stray from the guidelines as much as you like, but they're there to give you guidance on how to write and how to structure chords, what notes to play, and yeah, essentially this is what the key signature tells you. So I'll take major keys are typically very kind of happy sounding. They're your standard sound for happy, and then minor keys are your typical sad sounding keys, and each scale has a major and then a relative minor, so it's essentially the same scale but starting from a different point, and it has a different sound. So if you take C major, then your relative minor is A minor, and all you would essentially do is take the notes of C major and start from A, and that will give you your A minor scale, and it will sound very minor. And that is pretty much everything you need to know for major and minor and scales. There are other scales which we'll probably look at in the future, but that's kind of modal stuff and not very kind of basic terminology, so not really for this video. Okay, that is everything for this video, I think. If you would like an explanation on something, or I've missed something off the list that you feel I should be on here, leave a comment. Tell me what it should be, and I will possibly put it in the next video for basic terminology or other theory terminology. I plan to do more theory videos on stuff such as the major scale, the minor scale specifically, how to maybe looking into some modal stuff, chords and everything, stuff that, you know, if you want to know, please leave it in the comments and I will try and get a video on it. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like. If you would like to come back and see more videos, please subscribe. Check out my Instagram. It is LetsShred122. and check out my band. My band is Jaded. You can find us everywhere by Jaded Band IOW on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you later.